Welcome back to In the Kitchen with the Plant Based Nutritionista. This is Ethel Richards, and I am excited to take you along this journey of making a vegan mac and cheese. That's right, we are using sourdough noodles. Talk about good gut health. We're going to roast some squash and sweet potatoes, and we're going to enjoy a sweet and savory mac and cheese. Well, the first thing you see me doing here is making the steel cut oat milk. That's right, I made the oat milk from scratch using steel cut oats. I use parchment paper to individually wrap the sweet potatoes and the squash, and I put it in the oven for about 45 minutes to an hour on 395 to 425. Take your pick. All right, the squash and sweet potato have roasted. It is still very hot. I allowed it to cool. However, you'll still see some steam rising from the sweet potatoes and the squash as I remove the parchment paper. That dark items you see there, it's just the sugars from the sweet potato and the squash that has leached out onto the parchment paper, and that's okay. By wrapping the sweet potato and the squash in the parchment paper, you create an incubating environment where the nutrients are forced to stay inside the sweet potato and you can retain the moisture so your root vegetables don't dry out. Next, what you see me doing is peeling the skin off of all the sweet potatoes as well as the roasted squash. And what you'll see is it's fairly easy to peel off. I just put the skin aside, put the potato in the bowl. It is still hot, so be very careful. Next, what you see me doing is peeling the skin off of all the sweet potatoes as well as the roasted squash. And what you'll see is it's fairly easy to peel off. I just put the skin aside, put the potato in the bowl. It is still hot, so be very careful. Next, what we're going to do is remove the skin from the butternut squash. It is important to note that I went ahead and roasted the butternut squash without de-seeding it. I highly recommend that you go ahead and slice the butternut squash down the center in the future, de-seed it, and then roast it face down. But that's okay. We didn't do it this time. So I'm going to peel it to the best of my ability. Then I go ahead and get the knife, get that skin off. I flip it over on the bottom. I pull the rest of the skin off. I open up the butternut squash and I gently and very carefully, because I want to retain as much of the flesh as possible, remove the seeds from the squash. I highly encourage you to take your time when you're removing the seeds from the squash, as I show you here in this video. Once you're done scooping up the seeds, go ahead and gently remove them, put them off to the side in your scrap bag, and then go ahead and just fold over the squash and scoop it in the bowl with the roasted sweet potatoes. Next, what we're going to do is boil our noodles. This will allow these roasted sweet potatoes and roasted butternut squash time to cool off. I am very particular about noodles. I don't necessarily enjoy pasta noodles. However, when I can find ones that are made with things like lentils as opposed to wheat, I go ahead and buy it. This particular noodle, I was super impressed to find. It is a sourdough based noodle. So think about eating sourdough bread, just like sourdough starter, the flour, a little bit of salt, and we got a noodle going on here. I am just over the top about these noodles. They were absolutely delicious. They they cook just like any other pasta noodle cooks. So you'll see that I added some salt, went ahead and boiled it. And what I love about these noodles are the starch that they leave behind. So you'll see a little later on that I use some of that starch to just thicken up the mac and cheese. Moving right along, I've allowed the roasted sweet potatoes and butternut squash to cool off. So now what we're going to do is blend it. You will see here there is some steam building up in this blender. Let me tell you, the roasted sweet potatoes and squash were not fully cooled off. So I highly recommend you let them cool off. I went ahead and blended them in a vented capacity using the pulse feature of my blender. I have a plastic blender cup, it's not glass. So please, please, please exercise first aid cautions here. Do not blend hot substances because it can cause injury in the kitchen with your blender. That being said, I went ahead and blended the roasted sweet potatoes and butternut squash with the steel cut oat milk that I made. And let me tell you, the texture came out looking cheesy as ever and tasting quite delicious. All right, I added some nutritional yeast to the mac and cheese batter, roasted sweet potato and butternut squash mac and cheese batter. And I probably should have went ahead and added this with the mixture in the blender, but that's okay. I went ahead and added it, blended it up, and now what I'm going to do is combine it with the sourdough noodles. Now, to remove the sourdough noodles from the wok, I went ahead and used a large and deep skimmer spoon because I wanted to be careful not to rinse off the starch from the sourdough noodles. So that was important to me because I wanted a thickened consistency to the mac and cheese. So as you can see, I go ahead and I combine the roasted butternut squash sweet potato mixture, which is our cheese, if you will, to the sourdough noodles, and I go ahead and get them combined really, really well. I add some additional starch water from the noodles to the mixture just to thicken it up a little bit. So 4 tablespoons worth of that. I go ahead and mix it. I do several taste tests throughout, but I decide that for this first batch, I liked adding a little bit of salt as well as paprika to the mixture to combine it to just bring out more of the flavors that we are accustomed to eating a traditional mac and cheese. So, this whole food, plant inspired, roasted sweet potato, butternut squash mac and cheese really did turn out great. And this was actually the favorite of the entire family. And I mean, kid tested, mother approved, from the youngest to the oldest, this was the winner. So, in true mac and cheese form, I go ahead and put the mac and cheese in the oven uncovered for about 10 minutes. After about 10 minutes, I take it out and I noticed that the nutritional yeast hadn't fully integrated itself with the roasted sweet potato, butternut squash mac and cheese, and that's okay. It still has that consistency at the top where it's like crusted. Some people have crusted mac and cheese, traditional mac and cheese. So, but the purpose of adding the foil really was to just help it combine a little bit more. But as you can see, the mac and cheese turned out great. The first one was a traditional whole plant food, if you will, mac and cheese. The second one I made has sweet tamarind in it, so the color is a little bit different. It was definitely sweeter, and I will say that overnight, as the flavors tend to combine more, the fan favorite was still the basic, what we call the basic roasted squash and sweet potato mac and cheese compared to the sweet tamarind roasted sweet potato and butternut squash mac and cheese because they got sweeter over time as opposed to the basic one, which held the flavor very well. So, if you want to add sweet tamarind, I totally recommend it, but you may end up adding some savory flavors like Worcestershire sauce or things like that throughout the week just to balance that sweetness out with whatever you are eating. I'm the Plant Based Nutritionista here to inspire you to take your health back one meal at a time by eating more plants, moving your bodies, and of course, drinking that water.